go for our first mini project to help us practice more of the tools we've learned. We're going to do a mini logo design project, and the focus of this one is to practice our gradients, but also to bring in something new called transparency modes, our blending modes. And so we're going to need to open up a new window. We have the ones that we've already set up, but we need to bring one more into the mix, and that's transparency. So just make sure you have that open. You go to Window, and you go down to Transparency, and you go ahead and make sure that is clicked to on. There we go. So we have our window open. We're just going to keep it available so we can be able to access it very easily. So I'm going to kind of reproduce kind of a dynamic, colorful, bright logo that involves three different oval shapes that overlap with each other and kind of show a little bit underneath of what's behind the layer. So I'll just kind of do a little bit of an example. This is going to be a mini project. So we're going to go ahead and draw a simple circle. Doesn't have to be perfect, so I'm not holding shift. I'm just kind of making a circle. We're going to go ahead and make that, go ahead and delete a fill and just flip it to a solid shape so it doesn't have a stroke to it. And we're going to apply a simple gradient. So we're going to go ahead and get our gradient panel out. So I went ahead and clicked on linear, so we're just going to do linear for right now. But I wanted to show you something really neat. So this is linear. This is what we've been doing throughout the course. But there's this new option available, and if you don't see this option, you might not have the most up-to-date. I'm using Adobe Illustrator CC 2019, and it's brand new to this year. So 2019, if you have anything prior or you have not updated yet, you will not see this feature. So this is a really neat feature because you're able to set different points. It's very simple to a gradient mesh, which we'll get to also in a little bit, where you can have different points and create a much more complicated gradient. Instead of a simple linear left to right, you can create almost like a gradient mesh where there's multiple points that you can change. So you can see how you can make some really neat kind of colors out of this. And you can hold this little icon down at the bottom, see the circle? You can click and drag to make that particular color wider or shorter. So that one's white, so let's change that to yellow. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight a few of these and click off of them. I'm going to go ahead and do a simple radial gradient just in case a few of you guys cannot upgrade to 2019 for whatever reason. I'm going to go ahead and click on radial, and that's this middle option. And so now I have a radial that goes from one color to the next. So now I'm going to go ahead and pick my colors. I'm going to go ahead and switch to RGB mode, and I'm just going to pick some bright colors within the same color palette. So I like this color, so I'm just going to click right next to it, and it's going to have a similar color swatch. I'm going to pull down on this black. I don't need the black anymore. I'm going to drag this all the way over. I'm going to be able to double click and make this within the same family. Just make it a little darker. And you could do the eyedropper tool if you want to sample. So that's all we're going to do, and now I'm going to make kind of an interesting shape. Instead of just a boring circle and a circle on top of a circle that overlaps, I'm going to make a dynamic shape. So right now you could do a couple of things. We can go to the curvature tool. We can kind of push this out in different ways to make it more dynamic of a shape. We can also add anchor points. So let's go ahead and add like an anchor point or two. And I'm going to switch back to that curvature tool. Anytime I'm working with curves, the curvature tool is my best friend. So I'm just trying to make a dynamic little shape here. A little different than an oval. It's got some different bends and curves. There's my little dynamic shape. What I'm going to do now, there's my purple one. I'm going to make two other colors, and then I'm going to start to overlap them, and we're going to discuss the transparency window, which will be our different blending modes. So let's do our next shape. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make it really easy on me. I'm going to copy and paste this shape, and I'm going to go ahead and modify, go ahead and make it a little bit bigger. Modify my edges with the curvature tool to get kind of a different shape, because this will be overlapping the other shape. You'll see at the end kind of what we're going for, and I'll show you, I showed you at the beginning kind of what the final result was. So you get an idea of the effect and the style that we're going for. You can make these about the same size. I think those would look cool overlapped with each other. Let's make this a totally different color. So we have purple. Let's try some warm tones. So let's go ahead and double click this. Let me go ahead and grab my slider here. We could try pinks. We could try, I like that color. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that down, or actually I think I need to double click that and get a second point, and then I can get rid of that one. And I'm going to drag this over, and I'm just going to reduce the brightness slightly on all three sliders to get a little bit of a darker color. I might want more of an orange. Let me drag this up so you can kind of see my entire window. There we go. Let's do an orange. So I'm going to double click on this one and go to a darker or a lighter orange. That's kind of my orange pop of color. I'm going to copy and paste and do one more shape. So I'm going to mess with the curvature tool and get different shapes on this one. I'm just going to get, I think the blue will overlap with the purple a little better. You can get your eyedropper tool, sample the blue, and then make it darker. Similar to that. Okay, so now I'm going to overlap all three of these circles, and they can interact in a special way by letting certain pixels behind the certain object through. And that's the whole point of transparency window and the transparency modes. So I can select all three, and you have your opacity, which is how you adjust the transparency of a particular layer. So if you want to reduce the opacity, or in this case the transparency, and then have it be nothing, you could reduce it to 0. Or if you want it full max capacity where you can't see, there is no transparency, set it at 100. Or you could do something in between. So that's kind of how you adjust the transparency layer of any object. But then you have blending modes, and this is extra special. So I'm going to go ahead and overlap a couple of these. And right now they're totally covering each other up, but we're going to change the blending mode so that certain pixels are going to be allowed to shine through behind objects. So we're going to select all of these, and we're going to play around with a few of these to find out the one we think looks best. So let's go ahead and try overlay first. So you'll notice how they almost create different colors as they go behind the other color. So this purple is allowing some of that orange behind it, and it actually mixes to create pink. So you can kind of see this overlapping effect in action. So I'm just going to arrange the shapes where I think it's going to be kind of pleasing how they overlap. So they're a little bit more balanced in shape. Okay, so let's play around with some more blending modes. We do soft light, hard light. Some of these I don't use often, and some I use all the time. I tend to use screen a lot. If you ever want to screen, it kind of makes it a little bit brighter or lighter when you use the screen blending mode. And you could do this with photography as well. So you probably did some things in Photoshop. In Photoshop, you could do transparency modes. Same thing for Illustrator. So soft light seems to be kind of nice. I think overlay is probably the one we're going to go for, but I'm going to cycle through some of these. I'm going to play around with this just a little bit to kind of find the right match, and I'll let you know what I decide to come up with.